Imagine being born into one of Asia's most powerful aviation families, growing up surrounded by aircraft, ambition, and a legacy that spans continents, and then rising through the ranks to lead it all, only to lose everything almost overnight. This is the story of Chang Kuo-wei, a man who went from being the chosen heir of an aviation empire to an outsider, and who refused to accept defeat, choosing instead to start again and build something entirely new, something that would eventually become Starlux Airlines. To understand how this story begins, we have to go back to a different time and to a different man, Chang Yong-fa, a man who started with almost nothing, working in shipping, learning the business from the ground up, and slowly building what would become one of Taiwan's most powerful conglomerates, the Evergreen Group. From ships and cargo routes, his vision expanded into the skies, and that vision became EVA Air, an airline that would grow into one of the most respected in the world, known for its safety, its service, and its ambition. And for Chang Yong-fa, this was more than just business. It was a legacy he intended to pass on. Among his many children, one stood apart, not because of privilege, but because of passion, and that was Chang Kuo-wei, a man who didn't just inherit aviation, but lived it, training as a pilot, flying aircraft himself, and working his way through the system rather than simply stepping into power. He understood what it meant to operate an airline, from the cockpit to the boardroom, and because of that, many believed he was the natural successor, the one who would carry his father's vision forward, and in time, he rose to become chairman of EVA Air, stepping into a role that seemed destined for him. But in 2016, everything shifted, and the turning point came with the passing of Chang Yong-fa, a moment that should have marked a transition of power, but instead became the beginning of a conflict. Despite his father's wishes, and despite his experience, the outcome did not go in his favor, and slowly, control of the company slipped away from him until finally, in a move that shocked many, Chang Kuo-wei was removed from leadership. In what felt like a single moment, everything changed, and the man who once led a global airline found himself without a position, without authority, and without the empire he had been expected to inherit. After the dust settled, there was no immediate response, no dramatic press conferences, no public confrontation, just silence. And for a while, it seemed as though he had stepped away completely. But behind that silence, something was taking shape. A decision that would redefine everything, because instead of fighting to return to what he had lost, Chang Kuo-wei chose a different path, deciding that if he could not lead the airline he once called his own, then he would build a new one from the ground up and on his own terms. And so, between 2017 and 2018, that idea became reality as he announced the creation of a new airline, one that would not just enter the market, but challenge it, and that airline was Starlux. This was more than just a business venture, it was a statement, a bold move that signaled his return to aviation and a direct challenge to the very empire he had once been part of. And this time, every decision, every detail, and every step forward would be entirely his. From the very beginning, Starlux Airlines was built with a clear vision, not to be the cheapest airline and not necessarily the largest, but to deliver an experience that felt refined, elevated, and intentional, something that could stand alongside some of the best carriers in the world, like Emirates and Singapore Airlines. For Chang Kuo-wei, this was about more than transportation. It was about redefining what passengers could expect, creating an airline where comfort, design, and service all came together seamlessly. As the airline took shape, every detail was carefully considered, from the choice of aircraft, including modern Airbus models like the A321neo, the A33neo, and the A350, to the design of the cabins, the lighting, and even the smallest touches that passengers might not consciously notice but would certainly feel. Nothing was rushed, nothing was accidental, and everything reflected a desire to build something that stood apart from typical startups, something that felt premium from day one. Then, in January 2020, Starlux Airlines finally launched its first flights, marking the beginning of what should have been an exciting new chapter. But almost immediately, the world changed. The COVID-19 pandemic spread rapidly, borders closed, flights were canceled, and global travel demand collapsed, creating one of the worst crises the aviation industry had ever seen. And for a brand new airline, the timing could not have been worse. Faced with a situation that could have ended everything before it truly began, Starlux had to adapt quickly, reducing operations, focusing on limited routes, and carefully managing its resources, all while trying to stay afloat in an industry that had come to a near standstill. It was a period defined by uncertainty, but also by resilience, and against the odds, the airline managed to survive. As the world slowly began to recover and travel started to return, Starlux did not hesitate, expanding its network, introducing longer routes, and stepping into the global stage, including flights to major destinations like Los Angeles, signaling that it was no longer just a regional player but an emerging international airline. And in a twist that makes this story even more compelling, Starlux now finds itself competing directly with EVA Air, the airline that Chang Kuo-wei once led, operating on similar routes, targeting similar passengers, and standing as a new force in the same space. Today, Starlux Airlines continues to grow, building a reputation for quality and ambition, and establishing itself as one of the most promising premium airlines in the industry. And at the center of it all is a man who lost everything, only to rebuild, step by step, into something entirely new. This is not just the story of an airline, but a story of legacy, conflict, loss, and determination, a story that begins with an empire, falls into chaos, and rises again in a completely different form, from inheritance to exile to redemption. This is the rise of Starlux Airlines.